padam padam padam. Can you hear that? We bada 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 bum.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I've decided to include this new type of video in my usual content, where once a month we talk about and rate all movies and TV shows I watched during said month. I promise I'm not changing this channel into a movie channel. This is just for those of you who are also into cinema or just like to watch every video of mine. Otherwise, you can just skip it and I'll be back in 2 or 3 days with another Kpop video. Also, this month I didn't get to watch any K-dramas or Korean movies, but next month I'll try to get some in and we can discuss them in detail, because I know a lot of Kpop fans also love watching K-dramas, so I want to particularly focus on that. Definitely consider subscribing as well, and you can find my social media all linked down below in my description. Okay, let's get right into it because I watched a lot in March. So I kicked off the month by watching Zombieland Double Tap, which is a sequel to Zombieland. Go figure. I watched that one in February and truly loved it, so I didn't think this one could top it. Somehow it did though, and I highly enjoyed all of the technical improvement the movie gained from kills in slow motion, better masks and things like that. I also thought the humor was next level funny and all of the performances even better, which makes sense since this was released 10 years after their first movie. 2 new comfort movies for damn sure. Then I checked out The Power of the Dog because I just had to see what all of the hype was about. When I tell you I had no idea what was going on half of the time, I mean it. But then when the ending arrived, it all wrapped perfectly in my head and I realized this is actually a brilliant movie in almost all aspects. The way it is able to show the torment through things that aren't said out loud, contrary to just including your typical bullying or something, is so well done, and there isn't a single plot hole amongst so many details. If you didn't yet, check it out, even if you don't like westerns. I don't either, and I think this is the best one I've ever seen. Next, I watched Zola and I disliked pretty much everything about this movie. The dialogue is cringe, the movie just doesn't go anywhere, they entirely gave up on writing the ending, every single character is so unlikable, and I don't think anything about it was even remotely funny. One of the worst things I watched this month for sure. Next, I finally watched Mass, and I'm literally gonna let you go into this one blindly because I think that's how you will get the best experience. All I'm going to say is that it's great and depressing as damn hell. You will need a lot of tissues. As a part of my horror journey, I watched Crawl, and do you know what? This isn't even as bad as some people made it out to be. Sure, the ending is ridiculous and makes zero sense, but the gore is so good, and I think the alligators also look scarily realistic most of the time. Just a very easy thing to watch, and I had a good time. The fact I even have to talk about asking for it hurts me on a deep level. I hate this movie with everything within me, and the way it treats sexual assault just boils my blood. Please don't watch it, it's terrible. Or do watch it, but I'm not responsible for any rage you might feel towards many aspects of it. Also, it's extremely boring, so do with that what you will. Then I watched Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle and Jumanji The Next Level, both remakes or reboots of the original Jumanji. They're both hella flawed, don't get me wrong, but I do actually prefer at least the first remake to the original. Frankly, I haven't watched the original since a few years ago, so I definitely have to do that and then see how the remakes hold up compared to it. The second one is hideous as hell. And pretty much a copy of the first one, just slightly changed to be able to be called a new movie. The casting though is superior, and I'm sure I'll rewatch the first remake sometime in the future. The second one though, definitely not. I'd rather die. Then I watched The Deep House, underwater haunted house horror movie, mostly shot in found footage style. I will admit that I fell for the premise and ignored everyone who told me this is not very good. I mean, they weren't wrong. This movie isn't really badly made, it looks great and all, but the scares aren't even scary, and the whole backstory of the house they explore is so underdeveloped that you simply don't give a shit by the end. I did enjoy the way they wrapped it up though, because I didn't necessarily expect them to be bold enough for it, but they did deliver. Still, it takes way too long to get going, but if you just want something easy and not so scary to watch, check it out. Philadelphia is a movie I had to watch for one of my classes in law school, since it deals with a legal case pretty much the whole way through. You might think I wouldn't enjoy a movie I was pretty much forced to watch, but I cried my eyes out. This man deserved better, and I will stand by that till the day I die. It wasn't necessarily anything revolutionary, but it made amazing commentary on the gay community, homophobia, AIDS, and other difficult topics like that. I would suggest for everyone to check it out because it's important to never stop speaking about these things because they still happen, although they absolutely shouldn't. Next, I watched No Exit, the new Hulu original thriller, which I have a whole dedicated review for, so I won't talk about it in this video. Watch that for my detailed thoughts. Then I watched Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets for the first time after finishing the book. I have nothing to add that billions of other people didn't already put out there on the internet. It was great and I prefer it to the first one. Then I exposed myself to Windfall and I hated every second of this story, where nothing happens the whole time and every decision of every character makes zero sense. Don't fall for it, it's as bad as everyone is saying it is. The Tinder Swindler, though, is another hyped up thing coming from Netflix, and I decided to check it out one night because I didn't know what else to watch, and I didn't feel like watching something super intense like a horror movie. It was pretty fascinating to watch since I wasn't familiar with the case prior, but nothing extraordinary when it comes to the world of documentaries. I still rated it high because I thought the whole story was well presented, and the mixture of interviews, reenactments, and real footage and photos worked wonders in this format of storytelling. Next up, I watched This Is the End. Fucking hated it the most out of everything I watched this month, and I never want to talk about it again. I followed this up by watching Thunder Road, and I know my opinion will be highly controversial since this movie and Jim Cummings are so well loved. I thought this was average at best, and for it only being like an hour and a half long, it for sure did feel like 4 hours. It dragged in certain parts, I did not feel connected to him at all, and therefore went through this whole movie pretty much emotionless as a result. It just lacks character development hugely, and certain plot points just lead us nowhere. They were just there to fill up the runtime. It just wasn't for me, and I'm glad so many other people got more enjoyment out of it than I did. After 2 disappointments in a row though, I watched Zodiac, and oh my fucking god! I can't believe I haven't seen this sooner. It's about a real life case of the Zodiac Killer, which is still unsolved, and the way they showcased it through completely different eyes than I originally expected was brilliant. Also, the attention to detail and true tension I felt every time they got a new letter or some new information was insane. Although I knew of course it wouldn't lead them to the killer at the end. Also, that basement scene? My favorite scene in the entire movie, and I felt genuinely freaked out. I was holding my breath basically the entire time. So well shot, so well written, and the acting was amazing as well. I highly suggest you check it out if you're into true crime and somehow didn't see it yet. Then I subjected myself to all 5 movies in the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. So to The Curse of the Black Pearl, Dead Man's Chest, At World's End, On Stranger Tides, and Dead Men Tell No Tales. Why, you might ask? I literally have no idea. I saw the first 3 movies as a child, or like a teen I guess, remembering them as very good. That's why after watching all 5 of them, in my mind this is a trilogy. The last 2 movies don't exist. Overall though, I'm not the biggest fan of this franchise, and I hope they don't make any more movies in this universe. I don't want it, and nobody else wants it either. Nothing will ever top the first 2 movies anyways, so let's use up that Hollywood money for other, hopefully better movies. Next I watched The Fallout, a movie about 2 girls who survive a school shooting and try to cope with the psychological consequences while living in a world that seems forever changed. I highly recommend this movie, although it is extremely hard to watch and will make you question a lot of things in your life. Jenna Ortega carries her role marvelously, and the whole topic is handled with so much care and sensitivity. Just overall extremely respectful take on this horrific event in my opinion, and the ending left me in shambles for days. I just couldn't stop thinking about it. One of my favorite movies of all time, but will probably never rewatch it just because it is so heavy and emotionally challenging. Then I started my first ever horror franchise, which I also finished this month. That being the Scream franchise, consisting of Scream, the original obviously, Scream 2, Scream 3, Scream 4, and the latest being Scream 2022. I chose this one in particular because it sounded so up my alley and something I could genuinely enjoy. Well, enjoyment is an understatement because I fell head over heels in love with this franchise, and I can't wait to see Scream 6 in theaters next year. I don't know what it is about it, but it's almost comforting to watch, and the kills are getting better and better with each movie. The casting is done perfectly as well, which makes you even more devastated whenever we lose someone due to them being slashed up by Ghostface. Yes, Scream 3 is the notable low point of the whole franchise, but it's still enjoyable enough to the point it doesn't take away my love for other 4 movies. Slashers are for sure going to be one of my favorite subgenres of horror, if not even my favorite, so it's no surprise I enjoyed these ones so much. This month, I'm hopefully getting through the Child's Play or Chucky franchise, so we'll talk about that one in next What I Watched video, April edition. I just can't recommend you all Scream movies enough, and I can't wait to rewatch them in October. Oh, I'm also watching the TV show, I just didn't have time to get to it yet. Next up, I saw Midnight in Paris, and I don't even know how to talk about this movie. The storyline is so unique and beautiful, the cinematography is great, there were a few times I actually laughed, but other than that, it was missing something more interesting in the plot for me to entirely be able to love it. Therefore, I just like it, but even that's something. Definitely more than Idiocracy, the movie I followed up Midnight in Paris with. I know, this should be considered a crime. This isn't quite as bad as This Is the End, but it had similar humor, which clearly isn't for me, and certain things they tried to imply in regards to intelligence and IQ just didn't sit right with me. Also, I was bored for most of it or found it extremely cringe in the worst way possible, so I hope I never have to see or talk about this movie again. It's so funny to me how Death on the Nail is barely any better, but for a whole other reason. This is obviously based on Agatha Christie's novel, and I was excited to watch it for that reason alone. It also had a very good cast, so my hopes were pretty high. I was let down majorly though, because nothing ever fucking happens. This is a murder mystery, yet there is no mystery at all, because you can predict the killer from a mile away after the first 30 minutes. I just disliked it highly and wouldn't recommend it at all. I also seem to be one of the rare people who completely dislikes all my friends hate me. It's for a very personal reason though. I suffer from pretty bad social anxiety and panic attacks, so this movie really triggered me in a not enjoyable way, to the point I was extremely anxious for hours afterwards. It's partially my fault because it was marketed as anxiety inducing, so it's really at your own risk if you decide to watch it. Also, I didn't find the plot very interesting at all, and even as the end comes, certain stuff just don't make sense or are never explained. They just happened and that's it. I don't know, I didn't get any enjoyment out of it and I can't recommend it to you unfortunately, but maybe leave a comment down below if you enjoyed it so others can get a different perspective on this movie as well. Then I watched another 2-part documentary, Phoenix Rising, and oh my god. This is my favorite documentary now of all time, and I can't possibly tell you enough how badly I want you to watch this. Currently it's streaming on both HBO Max and Hulu. It's extremely hard to watch and very graphic at certain points, so please take all trigger warnings very seriously. I can't stop thinking about everything I saw and heard during the 3 hours of it, and I don't think I'll be able to anytime soon. It's basically a story of Avon, who shows proof and testifies to horrific abuse and torture she was exposed to by Marilyn Manson, while nobody was willing to help her for years. It's literally so traumatizing to watch in a way, but so important to hear about and learn something from. Please, please, please watch it if it's not going to be too triggering for you. I wrapped up the whole month in terms of movies by watching Practical Magic, because I just needed to chill after just finishing Phoenix Rising. I already saw this as a child, obviously, and remembered it as being super interesting and engaging, but upon my rewatch, it actually had me extremely bored and I didn't feel like much happened at all. I didn't care about anyone and I just didn't connect to the movie in any way. That's why it ended up just being an average watch for me, which is controversial, I know. It just wasn't for me as an adult anymore, and that's okay. In terms of TV shows, I finished season 1, season 2, season 3, and season 4 of Schitt's Creek, which is a show written and directed by Dan Levy, one of my favorite directors or writers ever because of this show alone. I also saw he signed a contract with Netflix, so I'm excited to watch his future projects. Schitt's Creek is just right up my alley, and I can't even begin to tell you how much I love every single character that ever appears. My emotional connection and the amount of times I cried happy tears during these 4 seasons is insane, and I can't recommend it enough. This is a show about Rose family who used to be extremely rich, but after they lose everything, they are forced to move into a motel in a small remote town they bought as a joke back in the day. There is so much more than that going on, and although the first season isn't as good and the humor doesn't quite hit all the marks, from season 2 on, it just gets better and better. In the 3rd season, a certain couple begins to develop, which makes the whole show as meaningful as it is to a lot of people, including me, so please stick around for it. Dan just writes such realistic characters, which makes it possible to relate to them easily and feel seen. I stopped watching it for a bit though, because I just don't want it to end, but I'll probably finish it in May. We will see. The last show I watched after that was season 1 of Yellowjackets, a horror show which moved quite a lot of my boundaries when it comes to horror. I was pretty uncomfortable during many scenes, but can now say that I'm very excited for season 2 and to see how they continue this story. It's basically about this soccer team of high school students and coaches who have a plane crash and are trapped in the middle of the forest where they simply have to survive. But some dark things quickly start happening, which makes some of them believe they aren't there alone. We also jump between that time and the present, which is focusing more on who they became because of that crash and everything they experienced in the woods during 19 months. It's one of my favorite shows I've watched this year, and I know this isn't saying much since we are only in April, but I'm sure it will stay up there throughout the whole year. I suggest you check it out, but do some research on the types of horror it includes to make sure you can handle it. It's quite graphic and gruesome at certain points, so definitely not for everyone. You might get spoiled doing that, but I still recommend it honestly. That's everything I watched in March, and I hope to see you in my April edition as well. Let me know what you watched last month or what you think about any of the movies and TV shows I talked about, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye bye!